Well, welcome back to Kitchen Table TCG. Today we're going to look at the weekly top 10. We're going to number it 10 to 1 by percentage gain, and then we'll go the other way for percentage loss. This uses all my market update information from the other videos throughout the week. If you're not a patron yet, head on over to patreon.com/KitchenTableTCG to see if it's right for you. For just $5 a month, you get access to all my data as a collection tracker. It's a great way to kind of track the value of your collection, kind of track if you have all the cards in the set, and just keep track of things. And you know, that's not the only perk as a patron. Patrons have plenty of perks. Go ahead and look at it at the website. But if you are interested in more of my opinions on stuff, at a $15 tier, I do have a podcast called If I Were Investing, where I kind of share all the fun stuff I would be doing if I had the amount of money to invest in Flesh and Blood. But without further ado, let's hop into the top 10 winners of Flesh and Blood through this week with our top 10 cards to gain value, number 10 to 1 by percentage gain. And at number 10, we've got Bracers of Belief. This is the first edition, of course, cold foil from Arcane Rising. And this is a cold foil common, and we are going to see a few cold foil commons on this list. Nothing too special about Bracers of Belief, other than that last week it was just incredibly undervalued at $200. And this week, even at $430, we are seeing the average of the cold foil commons even higher than that. So this was just one of those cards that was just undervalued compared to the other cards on the market. And now it's beginning to move back up to meet those kind of averages of the other cold foil commons. I really believe you will continue to see these move up as more and more people invest in them who do not have the money to buy the legendaries. Now at number 9, we've got Rapid Fire. This is the normal version from the super rare and Arcane Rising first edition. Last week this card was sitting at $9. This week it's at $20. That's a gain of 85%. And you know, a lot of the Ranger cards have been moving up over the last couple of weeks, and this was one of them that was not moving up very rapidly. So whatever's happening with the Ranger cards, now Rapid Fire is beginning to be targeted. Again, I've said this a couple weeks. A lot of people are anticipating that Monarch is going to kind of buff the Rangers with maybe some sort of arsenal advantage, and that will really help Rangers. And so people have been kind of buying into some of the Ranger cards. And in number 8, we've got Grasp of the Arknight. This is the first edition cold foil version of this legendary. Last week was sitting at $1,500. This week is sitting at $3,500. And there are a few legendaries on this list. And, you know, the legendaries just were one of the first things to really move. Actually, they were the first thing to move. Before the heart moved, before the eye moved, we started seeing these legendaries just completely drying up on the market. Because simply put, there were a few more of them on eBay and on the public markets. And when the information hit that the print run was smaller, the legendaries were really the first things to start moving, followed by then, of course, the Fableds and the cold foil commons right behind them. And Grasp the Arknight, again, a Runeblade card. All the legendaries are moving, though. And at number 7, we've got Stormstriders here, another legendary, another first edition cold foil from Arcane Rising. Last week sitting at $1,111. This week we're seeing at $2,500. That's a gain of 91%. And again, all the legendaries are moving up. And what I'm seeing is that the class-specific legendaries are sitting anywhere between $2,500 and $3,500. That Grasp the Arknight being on the higher end. But we will continue to see these kind of lock in at price points until they simply don't, and the market accepts whatever price they're at, and it's no longer increasing. But until then, I would not consider $2,500 to be the ceiling. And at number 6, we've got Sonic Boom, another Arcane Rising card. Actually, almost all the cards were Arcane Rising until we get to the top 3. This is the first edition. This is the normal version, not the foil version. Last week was sitting at $22. This week was sitting at $50. That's a gain of 127%. And actually, a lot of these kind of non-foil cards were moving up. Specifically, the super rares moved up quite a bit in the non-foil. Now, they didn't really make the top 10 list, but a lot of the cards were moving up. And so I think more and more people just trying to get their hands on some first edition cards, and a $22 to $20 to $50 entry point was pretty easy for a lot of people to get some first edition or alpha cards. And sitting at number 5, we've got the Null Rune Boots, another cold foil common. Last week, you could pick this up for $175. It may have been a little tough to pick it up at that low, but this week they are selling at $398 or $400. It's a gain of 127%. And again, everything I said about the last cold foil common applies here. The market is really starting to accept the $500 and $600 range for the cold foil commons. So it's going to take a while to get there for every single one of them, and they kind of move in tangents with each other as the way that the marketplaces work and sold data, and it just doesn't really all move at the same time. So last week 175, this week at 400. We'll see where that goes. At number 4, we've got Forked Lightning. This is the first edition. This one is the rainbow foil version. And last week's price at $40. I think I remember saying that was kind of a cheap price. It was kind of a really good deal that somebody got on eBay. This week, one moved at $112. That is kind of more the normal price here for a super rare rainbow foil from Arcane Rising. That is a gain of 180%. And of course, I always say this, but they really, really need to make this into a playmat because the artwork is so cool. And the rainbow foiling is really cool on it too. So I don't think that really applies to the price, but that is my personal favorite thing about this card. And then again, all the first edition cards that are in that lower price point are moving up. Number 3, we've got Reckless Swing. This is the Alpha Edition rainbow foil. $75 to $250. A $250 sold listing on this super rare rainbow foil. That's a gain of 233%. Honestly, this is just my opinion here, but that's a little bit high for this card currently in the marketplace. I might be completely wrong, but I just think that this is one of those outlier sales that kind of $250 for the super rare rainbow foils seems like that's a little bit high compared to the way that the Majestics are moving. We'll talk about the Majestics after this though. But let's just get to number 2. And at number 2, of course, we've got Sand Sketched Plan. This again is an alpha rainbow foil. This is a super, and this one moving up to $150, which seems to be more of the middle of the road for the pricing of the super rare rainbow foils. Last week's price at $40. You know, there's just not that many of these on the marketplace, so it's easy to see a movement this quick. But $150 seems more on the average side to me than the $250 card did in Reckless Swing. So I would say this is a more acceptable price for the super rares, the rainbow foil, although they are very difficult to see and get, and there's just not that many on the market. But there are more of these on the market than, of course, the Majestics. And at number 1, we do have a Majestic Alpha Edition rainbow foil Crippling Crush, sold on eBay for $880. The last price I had on this was $200. That's a gain of 340%, which is insane. And this would make this the most expensive class-specific Majestic that has sold. And so I wanted to highlight that I don't believe that all of the Majestic rainbow foils are going to be hitting this price, and I'm guessing that this is going to actually end up going down, as we'll see something happen. There was a card that was in the top last week and is now in the top losers for this week. We'll talk about that later in the video. So Crippling Crush got the number 1 slot. All right, and now let's move on to the top 10 cards to lose value. We'll start with number 10 and go down to number 1, which will be the card that lost the most value. And you're going to quickly see on this list that there are a lot of Crucible of War cards on this losing list. And this one is Beast Within. This is the first edition, of course, Crucible of War. Rainbow foil last week was at $38. This week's at $35. That's only a loss of 8%. And I want to get this out of the way right now. The highest loss on this list is only 39%. So most cards were not going down this week. And so a lot of these just are kind of small movements. There are a couple significant ones to chat about. This is not one of them. Beast Within going from $38 to $35 just isn't that significant, honestly, in the grand scheme of things. But we do have a lot more Crucible cards on this list. And let's get to number 9, which is Magnetic Shockwave. This again is the rainbow foil version. This went from $30 to $27, which again is only a $3 difference. That is 10% though, so a little bit more significant. But I don't think that anything significant is driving the prices of these down. I just think a lot of the attention is on the Arcane Rising and on the WTR sets right now, and that's what's going up rapidly. And so your Crucible of War cards are really the only ones that had any little downward pressure. There may have even been some people kind of selling some cards in order to pick up additional cards from the other sets, thinking that they were better spec. So number 8, we again have another Crucible of War card. This is the normal version of Heron's Flight, going from $17 to $15. I have seen this card starting to pick up a little bit in some metas, but nothing radical. And from 17 to 15. Again, that's just a $2 change, 11, 12%. Not really that big of a deal, but it was very interesting again to see a lot of Crucible cards here on this list. But we'll see what that looks like. It'll also be very interesting to see if these Crucible non-foil cards hold up when Crucible Unlimited, or if Crucible Unlimited is printed. I know it is labeled as to be determined or to be announced on the website, so we'll see what happens there. But at number 7, we have Cash In, and this is the first edition Rainbow Foil. This is one I wanted to talk about because Cash In has been very, very hot over the last 3 months. A lot of people buying them up with speculation towards Monarch with the kind of merchant system going on. So to see a loss in this card is actually pretty significant because the card has not been going down at all. So from 48 to 41 isn't a huge loss, 12%, but maybe some of the attention again is not just as focused on some of the specs, but more focused on that FOMO of missing out on some of the arcane or WTR cards that we're going to dry up first before people put their money back into Crew again. And at number 6, we've got Data Doll. This is the first edition, the Rainbow Foil. Last week was at 60. This one's at 51 today. Loss of 14%. Again, everything that I'm saying applies. We will get to some things that are not Crucible War, but for now, all these things matter in Crucible War. Simply put, the money is flowing into the other sets, and that's causing some of these Crucible cards to maybe more of them hit the market. Again, as people are trying to get some money to buy the Arcane Rising cards, to buy the WTR cards, and a rare Rainbow Foil. It is short printed, Data Doll, and all the heroes was short printed. So we won't see too many of them, and we won't see like a continuation of a hard downturn on that market. At number 5, another first edition Rainbow Foil, Flood of Force. This card just doesn't see any play, and this is what I'm saying, that like the play of a card really does help dictate the value. And I know a lot of people say, oh, it's just investors, but that's just not accurate. And, this card isn't played in any decks, and that's why it's a majestic first edition Rainbow Foil at $18 or at $15 this week. Incredibly low, in my opinion. And I think if the meta shifts, you can quickly see this card moving up or down. Probably not down, actually. This is probably the bottom for the card, but you could quickly see the card moving up if the meta shifts into a Rushing River, Flood of Force type deck. All right, let's go to number 4. This is Stamp Authority. I think this is the last Crucible card. This is the first edition Rainbow Foil. Again, 18% from 28 to 23 just isn't that significant. And again, $23 for a majestic Rainbow Foil seems low to me, in my opinion. But we'll see what the market decides. It kind of is what it is. They are more printed than the Crucible cards, or they are more printed than the WTR and ARC cards. But Stamp Authority, just again, not really that well played, especially in Guardian, which is a deck that just isn't played at all. So just no attention on the card to keep it moving. So it lost 18%. All right, let's get away from Crucible cards. That was a little boring. In Arcane Rising, we did have a 9th blade of the Blood Oath cell for 102, and that is off of last week's 103. This was a card that was on the hot list last week, going up to 130. And so again, just some retracement. I think you're going to see a lot of this over the next couple weeks. Like that Crippling Crush that sold for $880. I'm going to guess that there's going to be a few more that hit the market at that price, which will drive the price back down. Maybe not all the way down to the $400 range like the other Majestics, but I think anytime you see a card spike like that, you'll start seeing some more hit the market, and that might be what happened here with this 9th blade of the Blood Oath, down from 130 to 102, again a 22% loss. And at number 2, this is Knock the Death Whistle. Went from $130 to $100. That's a loss of $30 or 23%. And again, this is the same thing, right? This was a card that was kind of hot over the last couple of weeks with the Ranger and everything going on. But then all of a sudden, a little bit of a lower listing. Might have been some people taking some profits on the card. Who knows what exactly happened, but this week it ended up on the low list. And it's interesting again to see a Ranger card, because the Ranger cards have been so hot. To see it kind of on the other side of the list, it's just interesting. Maybe people are starting to spec on other things. I'm not really sure exactly, or it just could have been one of those random sales. And number 1, Alpha Rampage. Last week was at $550. This week was at $335. That's a loss of 39%. This is one of those cards. I don't think this one made it on the list when I was doing a video. I can't actually remember. when I was doing one of these videos, but this was on one of my market update videos, and I kind of said, this is just one of those things where it was the only one on the market at $5.50, and somebody probably just needed it to complete their set. That doesn't necessarily make the card worth $5.50 to everybody else in the market. And so when additional ones hit the market, the price point was $3.35, which is at the average of all the other Majestic rainbow foils. So I think this is a more accurate price than the $5.50. Well, that's all I got for you guys today. That was the top 10 winners and losers. Again, if you'd like to support the content, head on over to patreon.com/KitchenTableTCG, where I do have some perks for you. At $5 a month, you can have access to a collection tracker, which allows you to see the real-time value week to week of your collection. I also have a podcast if you're interested in some of my opinions on what I would be doing to invest heavily in Flesh and Blood. I do believe it's a great market to invest in, so head on over to patreon.com/KitchenTableTCG. And also, just thank you so much for being here. Thanks for watching the videos. If you can't afford to support me or don't want to support me on Patreon, that is okay. Thank you so much, and remember to be kind to the people around you.